Hey folks, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. It's Chris Peterson of HuskerBigRed.com, and with me as always is my co-host Danny Gillette of thegreatcornholio.org, and we are here to recap a huge recruiting weekend for the Nebraska football program. Already got some commitments in tow for head coach Matt Rule. The Nebraska basketball team totally got screwed, so we'll touch on that and also some coaching staff updates. But Danny, it has been, man, Matt Rule, does this guy ever sleep? I mean, there's just the recruiting has really picked up, and it was a big visit weekend. The Huskers have already got, some commitments. Quentin Ives coming out of there, a new long snapper. But what are your thoughts on a huge recruiting weekend for the Huskers?
I need Matt Rule's caffeine plan is what I need. This guy doesn't seem like he sleeps at all. And definitely a big recruiting weekend for Nebraska. Two commitments in Quentin Ives and Marco Ortiz. And then you mentioned the decommitment of William Watson. It's been a busy couple of weeks ever since Matt Rule arrived, and that's what I love to see. And I'm hoping for some more good news a little bit later this week. The wide receiver, whose name I am blanking on, who you probably
Jalen Lloyd. Yep.
Yeah, he's supposed to announce on Saturday, I believe. So that's one to watch for too. And I just love this time of year, honestly, because it's more fun than the regular season, at least for the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Lloyd was one of the guys I mentioned last week as a possible commitment. So I definitely think, he's going for the Huskers on Saturday. He is a 10-4 guy in the 100. So, I mean, you look at him and Bryce Turner runs a 10-2 in the 100, and that was as a junior. So, I mean, that's legitimate speed. That's like big time speed. So, I mean, if you look at Matt Rule's philosophy, it's about adding that. And I think, the Huskers have done a good job of doing that. And, the long snapper, Nebraska needed one. He is going to be on scholarship. And, if one thing that's interesting is if Tristan Alvano, the kicker ends up committing, which there's some competition from Iowa and Boston College, but I would strongly assume he'd end up at Nebraska, the Omaha West Side kid. But yeah, I think that, that would put four special teams guys on scholarship, which would be a lot, but you've got to execute in that area of the game. And so it's good to get, a long snapper in the fold. A kid from Florida was a 5-star rated, long snapper. So that was a good pickup. And yeah, William Watson did, he flipped his commitment to Virginia Tech, but that was a Mark Whipple move, all the way. And frankly, nothing against, Watson, but the way Nebraska recruited, the 2023 quarterback class was just a travesty. The fact that they should have had Zane Flores, looking back, they probably should have had Max Duggan, and they probably should have had Joe Burrow. But again, Scott Frost apparently has no idea, what a good quarterback looks like. And, that showed again in the 2023 class, because I'm not, it just boggles the mind that, you have a really good kid in Zane Flores that, Nebraska basically never showed any interest in until Scott was fired. So no surprise there on Watson. And, do you think that Nebraska is going to add another 2023 quarterback?
Yeah, I think it would be wise for them to do so. I thought he was a really great passer, a bit undersized, but Whipple had been recruiting the kid for so many years. Whipple was the head coach at the University of Massachusetts. I think it was 05 or no, maybe not that early, but he's been, keeping an eye on Watson since, Watson was in the 6th grade. And so this commitment really was Whipple's doing. And, hopefully Watson finds a good place where at Virginia Tech, where he can have success. And, I never doubted his talent. I thought he might have been a bit undersized, but like you kind of alluded to, that just no cohesiveness with the staff in terms of recruiting. So, I just hope the best for him, and I'm happy he found a spot instead of entering the transfer portal, which has like 20 million players in it already.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, what happens, with the quarterback position going forward. Jeff Sims was supposedly on campus, but it's no one really knows if he actually did take a visit or not. He wasn't there over the weekend, wasn't at the basketball game. Sean Callahan of Husker Online said he caught up with him, but couldn't actually get him to confirm that he was on campus. So that's kind of a weird deal. But Marcus Stokes is the name I would watch for the 2023 class. He's a 4-star kid, but he lost his scholarship at Florida because of, some derogatory comments. He was committed to Penn State at one time, and flipped to Florida, so I don't know. Florida also, kind of cut his scholarship after they landed another top 50 quarterback. So, I mean, there was kind of some controversy there, but I don't know if it was just about, some of the comments that he made. I believe he may have said the N word or something like that. So, I mean, there is some baggage there, but outside of him, I don't know. There's the kid from South Dakota, but he's committed to Washington. And so I don't really think there's a ton of possibilities, but, with the transfer portal, it is what it is. They've got a few, quarterbacks on scholarship that I'm guessing are going to stick around, Harburg and probably Torres and some of those guys. So I don't know if it's a huge need. I don't think you need to reach on one. And if you don't feel good about Stokes, the comments that he kind of made, or if you don't feel good about him being part of the program, then, I wouldn't reach for him. But yeah, Watson, I'm not taking that as a huge hit. Matt Rule and the staff never contacted him, never had any interest in him, never recruited him. So I think that tells you all you need to know.
With Harburg and Torres, though, I think there's going to have to be a lot of development. And this staff is good at development, but we didn't even really hear Harburg and Torres' name last year. So I wonder where they are in terms of skill. And, Torres has a very, very strong arm. So there definitely is skill there from Torres and Harburg, but I just wonder how far along or how not far along they are.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that Rule likes Harburg, so I'm interested that he sees that. With I know that people get somewhat, with the Jeff Sims, he's 100%, the prediction with the transfer portal. And one thing to remember with the on-3 thing is it's different. With the on-3 prediction machine is different than the 24/7 crystal ball, where somebody actually has to put in like an expert prediction. On-3 guys can put in expert predictions, but the prediction machine also heavily weighs like visits. So if Nebraska's the only place a guy has visited, he's going to have, most likely 100% chance to go there. So like we've seen that with Ernest Hausman in Iowa, he's been, Iowa looks like the team to beat there, but reporters have said that, Michigan's a team to watch. So with the transfer portal thing, I wouldn't get too caught up with the, the prediction machine. I think that's better for recruits because it really takes in, visits. So it's not just, they're trying to make it a prediction that's based on the whole recruitment. So like visits, expert predictions, they are weighted on there. But yeah, so don't get too caught up with that. Like it's going to say, I think Nebraska's probably the favorite for Cornelius and Jeff Sims and And all that really means is that they've taken visits to Nebraska, nowhere else. So I wouldn't put too much stock into, what the on-3 prediction machine is saying outside of with, I'd put more stock into it with 2023 recruits, to be honest.
Sounds like a really easy job. Maybe I should look into getting one of these jobs, but no. But Sims to me was always interesting because we talked about it a little bit last week. And, does their interest in a quarterback overall? I know Sims, like you just said, didn't come for a visit or anything like that. But does this mean that Nebraska is looking for a quarterback because Casey Thompson is leaving? Or do they just want depth? I mean, I don't think Jeff Sims, for example, would come here to be a backup quarterback, but you never know.
Yeah, I don't see it, especially with, there's a lot of other opportunities out there. There's a bunch of new head coaches. I mean, so I wouldn't think that, he would come here because really, I mean, Oregon could be looking for a quarterback, Arizona State, I mean, UCLA, Kansas State could be looking, could be in the mix for a quarterback with Adrian Martinez leaving. I mean, I know they like the other kid, but there's a lot of, Oklahoma State, Notre Dame. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So I feel like Jeff Sims being, like a top, I don't know, whatever he is, 15 or 20 quarterback in the transfer portal, which is pretty crazy. I mean, that shows how many guys are in there right now. I don't think that he would come to Nebraska to, to be a backup. So maybe that's part of the reason is maybe they got some word that Casey Thompson is coming back. He needs to make a decision, honestly, and the staff needs to kind of push him there soon because they're going to miss this wave of transfer portal quarterbacks. And if he's not coming back, they need one, maybe two, because I don't trust any of the backups, on this team right now. And I know they got terrible coaching. I mean, really, 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 really bad coaching. I mean, horrible coaching. I don't know if there's been any team in the country that's got worse quarterback coaching than Nebraska. And I'm just being honest, because Mark Whipple.
You're right.
Mark Whipple's horrible. Mario, whatever his stupid name, was terrible. Scott Frost was horrible. Can't recruit. So, I mean, really, Chuba Purdy, those guys look bad, but if you get the worst coaching in the country, you probably aren't going to do that well. So, maybe, of course, we don't know who Nebraska's, we can talk about that really quick since we don't know who the quarterback coach is going to be because Jake Peets is not coming now. So we'll see it. Honestly, I feel like it's going to end up being Marcus Satterfield. I feel like he's going to coach quarterbacks and they'll get a new tight ends coach. That's what I think is going to happen right now.
I am not surprised that Peets is not coming at all. He's an extremely hot coaching name, so I'm not surprised he's not coming. I really wish he would have came, but such is life in the coaching world. We already kind of got our luck handed to us with the defensive coordinator and Tony White, in my opinion. So I guess we can only have so much luck. But Peets isn't coming, and so normally the offensive coordinator. I shouldn't say normally, but a lot of times the offensive coordinator will also help out with the quarterbacks. And let's just hope the quarterback development is a little bit better than what it has been.
Yeah, for sure. And so we'll see with Sims if he visits anywhere else or if Casey, makes any other, makes a decision at some point. I know he's got, some injury issues. I think he's been working through some surgery. So I don't know if he's going to be ready for spring ball or not. But, that's a tough deal too. I mean, a lot of people have said, oh, he's a veteran quarterback and he doesn't need the spring ball. Yeah, but this is going to be a new system. So while I do think that he has the mental capacity to learn the system with, through a lot of mental reps and stuff, because he's seen a lot of different football over the course of his career, it would be nice to, have the starting quarterback be getting some reps in spring ball, but, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I definitely think that there's still going to be some movement at the quarterback position, one way or another from the 2023 class, from a transfer or from Casey. Well, we should be hearing something, in the next couple of weeks, but, even if Casey comes back, I think they're going to be trying to, add some depth. And if it's not a guy like Jeff Sims, it wouldn't shock me if they, brought in another, so-called veteran. I mean, somebody who's maybe played somewhere else, but, isn't looking to start, a Chuba Purdy type guy who's got a little bit of experience, but, maybe can still have a chance to play. And, we'll see. I do think Chuba's going to be here because he really can't transfer anywhere else. I don't think because of the, he already transferred and, at this point, who would want him? I don't think he would be a hot commodity. He's just going to have to try to turn himself around at Nebraska because he didn't put anything good on film. I mean, honestly, the 3 games he played, that stretch of football was some of the worst offensive football in Nebraska history. And that's not like making it up. He went like how many drives, like 20 drives, and they scored like once or twice. I mean, and like 17 of them were 3 and outs. I mean, that's not the exact number, but it's pretty damn close. So, I'm just trying to put it out there. Like, Purdy and Smothers and these guys, they need to try to come back to Nebraska and or they need to go to the FCS, frankly, because they've got some development to do. And that's not, I'm not trying to take shots at the kids. That's just what's been put out on film. So they either need to get better or they need to, enjoy the bench or get gone. So we'll see what happens there. But one thing, back to the commitments. I mean, let's talk about Quentin Ives, who committed on Saturday or Sunday on the spot. Another interesting player, a speedy kid out of New Jersey, has a kind of a different frame for a running back. And I don't know how accurate the measurables are, but it says 6'3", 180 on 24/7. He's probably in the closer 190 to 200, but over 1,600 yards last season. He's been talked about as a touchdown waiting to happen. So Danny, what's your impressions of Quentin Ives, the second commitment here for Matt Rule in this 2023 class?
Watching some of his highlights, I definitely think he's a little bit more than 180, but his running style fits the Big Ten very well. And I'm not saying he has this type of skill level, and I'm not saying this is who he's going to be, but his running style reminded me of Saquon Barkley a lot. That physical type of quick cut, explosive running style. He got downhill really well, and I think. Ives is not ranked in any of the major recruiting sites. He's not ranked in 24/7 Sports. So, this is a diamond in the rough, but it's not, I don't think, a shot in the dark. He's a good running back. And, I'll be curious to see if he gets a ratings bump. And I talked about this yesterday in my piece that I wrote. I'll be curious to see if he gets a ratings bump like the wide receiver last week did, Bryce Turner, because as soon as Turner committed to Nebraska, he got a 3-star designation, and I'm wondering if Ives will be able to do the same.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. I also know I think Jalen Lloyd bumped up a little bit too since Nebraska started showing interest. I mean, that happens quite a bit. I think, it might just be they're saying, hey, Nebraska took this kid and maybe we need to reevaluate him again or something. And so, but part of it, I just think the recruiting services are like, oh, these coaches know more than we do. And, they see it on the film. I think they have to see it for themselves. I don't know exactly how that process works. They're very cloak and dagger about how they actually do their rankings. But I agree. I think, it's not a shot in the dark. And if you kind of do some research into this recruitment, EJ Barthel, is recruiting this kid at UConn. And so, basically, I think it's a case where Matt Rule is really trusting, EJ Barthel to make this evaluation. And, everybody says he's a really good recruiter and kind of evaluator and developer of talent. So, we'll see if he's right about this kid, but he was up in New Jersey. EJ was obviously coaching, running backs at UConn. So, it seemed like a natural fit. And, Matt Rule, basically it's how the process works is Matt Rule has to give the final approval for, offers and commitments and whatever. So, he saw something, that he liked in this kid, and they needed a running back in this class. They really did. And, I think it's a good move. And, it kind of goes back to that thing that, we was talked about a lot when he was hired in his recruiting philosophy. And it's, if you're going to miss on speed in Nebraska, that's definitely the tact that they're taking so far with this 2023 class.
And I like that, Ivy's is from the state of New Jersey. I feel like that's a very under recruited area. I feel like you can find a lot of solid football players from the state. And so, I'm curious to see what Ivy's can do. I think he definitely has skill. I mean, if you watch his highlight tape and, his film, there's definitely something there. So I'm curious to see, what kind of impact he'll make. And, I know these, commitments lately haven't been, 5-star commitments. And I know that has some fans worried, but I think, you're seeing players that maybe just fly under the radar. And now they're getting their shot with Nebraska. So I trust this staff and their evaluation process. And, I'm very excited about Ivy's.
Yeah, and I think you just have to, they're going to be in a better position to recruit the next class. I think that they're doing a really good job with the short amount of time they have, and trying to put this class together. And, this was a big visit weekend. I think they're focusing, on the right guys. I mean, you talk about, big time talents. Well, Malachi Coleman is right there. I mean, he's one of them, a top 100 recruit. And I think, Michigan and Colorado are in the mix, and Coach Prime has me worried when he's going to, make his trip to Lincoln and try to get this kid to Colorado. That's why I think I would worry about the most is Michigan. And now, that Colorado did an in-home visit with them over the weekend. I mean, that's, I could see Prime having an impact on this recruitment. So we'll see what happens there. But those are the guys who I'm worried about. But I do think that Nebraska's kind of established itself as the leader with Malachi Coleman. I think it's the leader with Cameron Lenhart. I think they're going to have a good shot with Ashley Williams. I do think they're going to get the kicker. I think they're going to get Jalen Lloyd. And then, this is a kid that's visiting next weekend, but the crystal ball has started to trend, not just the crystal ball, but, rivals for Ramir Stewart, a safety who's out of the Philadelphia area. And again, he's just another 3-star kid, but he's ranked 465th, and his offer list is big time. It's got Alabama, Michigan, Notre Dame. He's got over 30 offers, a bunch of Arkansas, Auburn, Clemson, Florida, Florida State, Georgia Tech, so LSU, Ole Miss, Oregon, Penn State, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, A&M, USC. So all these schools have offered this kid, which tells you, the kind of prospect he is. He's out of Philadelphia. We haven't really talked about him yet, but he's 5'11", 195 pounds. He's taking his official visit next weekend. So I would, Nebraska's got Steve Wiltfong from 24/7, put in his crystal ball, and there's been some more to follow. Adam Friedman from the top guy at Rivals. So basically, when you have the top recruiting experts from 2 separate sites putting in predictions for you, you should feel pretty good. So I think Nebraska's going to be, landing Stewart next weekend with a commitment.
And, you take a look, and sometimes 3 stars don't get as much love as 4 stars or 5 stars, by the fans and even by the national media. But that offer sheet you just listed off, I mean, that's insane. There's been a lot of 3-star prospects that have gone on to the NFL. I mean, if you look at a team like Clemson, for example, they had a lot of 3-star prospects over the course of the last couple of years, and obviously not this year, but they've been in contention for national championships. They've been in the college football playoff, and what has Clemson been able to do? They've been able to develop, and so I think that's a situation where Nebraska can land some 3-star kids, and if they can develop, they'll be okay. I mean, they don't all have to be 4 or 5 stars, because sometimes the 4 or 5 stars don't pan out. But I like the idea of Stewart. He that safety position, is one in especially in a 3-3-5 where you're going to need athleticism, and you're going to need quickness, and you're going to need impact playmaking, and I think Stewart can provide that. So I'm curious to see what Stewart does next weekend, if anything comes out of it, and then Jalen Lloyd, because he's from Nebraska, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, he's from Omaha. Yep.
So keeping a kid in state would be huge. And not for nothing, but a lot of the in-state kids are still in the 2023 class that have been in the class for the past couple months.
Which I think is smart by Matt Rule. Some people might, tell you to ignore Nebraska kids, but for one, the talent in the state is growing. I mean, this is, we look at Zane Flores in 2023 and Daniel Kalen in 2024. That's back-to-back classes with the top 500 quarterback, and Kalen's trending up. It wouldn't shock me if he was a 4-star at some point. So, his offer list is moving up, and I think it's smart though, because the players, while they don't have a tie to this staff, most of these guys that grew up in Nebraska have a tie to this program, and I think it really meant something to a lot of them for Rule to kind of talk about the history of that and how he's going to rebuild it, and how he kind of wants to build it starting with those guys. And I really think it was smart how he kind of is building the inside out from your recruiting operation, and that's how it should be. And too often I think that there were guys that were just ignored in the state of Nebraska. And I'm not saying that every kid here is going to be great or whatever, but when you have big time play. I mean, Scott Frost had multiple 4-star players in his own backyard in Omaha that would not even give Nebraska the light of day. And then he's ignoring other kids that should be here. Zane Flores should be a Nebraska commitment. I mean, it's recruiting malpractice, frankly. And, and Nebraska's still, recovering from it. And then that wasn't just at the quarterback position. I mean, that was across the board. They were making these kind of boneheaded decisions. So, I don't think that type of thing helped the old staff, but I do think that it was a good job by Rule to, get like Maverick Noonan and Malachi Coleman and get some of these guys kind of, locked in. And so, we'll see what happens. Malachi's the big one, though. It does seem like, there's a lot of different rumors. There's people saying that, he could still turn around and sign by early signing day, or he could take this thing into February. If I'm Nebraska, I definitely want him to sign early. I mean, I think that's the best play for Nebraska. Try to get him in here and get him signed, and then you don't have to worry about it. But we'll see what happens. I am worried about Deion Sanders and those guys coming in, and Michigan probably make a pretty good pitch to him too. But the NIL deal again, I go back to that. The NIL for Malachi Coleman, it's not going to be the same anywhere for him, but Nebraska, even at Colorado, it's not going to be the same. Because people, I mean, the thing about it, yeah, people in Colorado are going to know him, and they would know his name, and they'd be excited about him, whatever. But he's not going to have the same pull as he would have in Nebraska. He steps on the field day one. Every single person in that stadium knows who he is. And so I just feel like, if that's something that matters at all, the NIL side of it, I feel like it would just be through the roof at Nebraska. I mean, to be honest, within 2 or 3 years, he probably will have the highest NIL deal of any Nebraska player has ever had. He's got that, I've said it before, that he's got Randy Moss type of ability. I don't even care about that. I mean, watch him, he's on the freaks list for recruits, and watch, they had like a punt return of his. He was going like 21 miles an hour, man. I mean, this kid is an absolute freak in a good way, and Nebraska needs to do whatever it can to get him.
You want to talk about absolute freaks? I mean, this is why it's important for Nebraska to kind of establish their, stakes in the state for recruiting, because 2024, you have Caleb Pyfrom, Caleb Benning, Isaiah McMorris, Kalen, Carter Nelson, and David Hall. Hall and Nelson all have 90 overall numerical ratings from 24/7 Sports. Kalen is an 89. McMorris is an 88. Benning is an 88. So there's a ton of talent coming up in these rankings and in these classes. And so, as much as I want them to land Coleman, which I obviously do, I would be very worried that Prime goes into 2024 and looks at the kids from there. Hall, Kalen, Benning, like those type of guys. Like this is a loaded in-state class for 2024. So I would also try to focus on just making sure to, you know, get my offers out, get some visits in when the time comes, and because this is a class 2024 that has a lot of talent, and hopefully Nebraska can kind of keep that talent in state, but it's going to be difficult. I mean, there are a lot of talented kids coming up.
Yeah, I think you make some good points there. I feel like Nebraska's in a good spot with some of those guys, and
Hall, I think.
and with I think they're in a better position now with Daniel Kalen. Matt Rule basically said, we don't want you to leave the state of Nebraska, and that's not something that I mean, even Mickey Joseph didn't really give him the time of day when he was kind of running things. So, I mean, just the idea that you'd have a top 500 quarterback that you basically don't talk to for a year, I mean, it's just baffling. But I know that Mickey did start to get things trending in the right direction with Daniel Kalen, who I had a chance to interview a couple months ago, and I do think that Nebraska is a school that he is very interested in, but he's got a lot of other offers. He talked back then about making a decision around the start of the new year, so I don't think that that's really going to happen. And if that was to happen, I don't think that would be a good thing for Nebraska right now. But yet, once they make this push, for signing day in 2023, he would be one of the top guys that, I would look at, Carter Nelson. I think Benning, I would be shocked if he doesn't wind up being a Cornhusker at this point. I just feel like, he's the legacy guy. And I feel like as long as Nebraska pushes and wants him, he'll kind of be in the fold. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things kind of shift from, the transfer portal in 2023 to 2024. But I do think that we're going to see a strong push to keep those guys in state for sure.
Carter Nelson, man, I watched some of his highlights. Man, he's
he's
good.
big time. He's
really
time.
Really good. So, and
his recruitment's definitely going national.
Oh yeah,
so
100%. And granted, Nebraska has had trouble with some highly rated tight end prospects before, but the fact of the matter is, we need impact players at the position. So if you're gonna miss, at least miss big. And so Nelson to me would be a huge get, but like you said, I think his recruitment is going national. He's an absolute stud, and while he may not go to Nebraska, I think it's good for the state for high school football to get that national recognition, because as much as we want him to come home, a lot of them don't, and that's all right. But it's good for the state to kind of get put in the national spotlight for developing young men and athletes.
Yeah, and one thing I was just thinking of here, to get back to this this past recruiting weekend, Omar Hale, who's on the staff for Nebraska, recruiting. I'm not sure what he is, but somehow on the recruiting staff. But he basically tweeted out a bunch of, like kind of firework things, and basically indicated that Nebraska got 4 commitments this weekend, and it's we got Ives. The long snapper, I believe Jalen Lloyd is number 3. So who do you? I've been trying to rack my brain. I've got a few candidates, but who do you think? Who do you think is the 4th guy? Do you think I have those other 3 right? I mean, obviously we know the long snapper and Ives. I think Lloyd's pretty clear is going to be the 3rd one. So who's your number 4?
Elijah Judy. I thought he would have committed this weekend, but I honestly think that Elijah Judy is the 4th one. I think he would be a great addition. Honestly, all the kids that were added this weekend were great additions, and I think it's just going to be a matter of waiting for their announcements, because I know Judy has a couple more visits this week, if I'm not mistaken. I saw you retweet something, and I forget. I think he said he was going to visit. Let's see.
I think he has a couple more visits. I don't quite remember.
If I'm getting him mixed up
with somebody else, but so I don't think it's Judy. I'll disagree with you there, but who I think it could be is a guy that came in visiting late, Ben Scott, the Arizona State offensive lineman, who wasn't really even reported, but 28 game starter. He's got family ties to Columbus, Nebraska. His dad was a wrestler for the Huskers. I don't know that he's got any other visits or anything set up right now. If he's a guy I'm wondering, or it could be the kicker, but he's also going to take some visits. But I'm kind of really hoping that it is Ben Scott, the offensive line transfer from Arizona State, because that would be huge. That would be a huge pickup.
And I saw late last night, actually, this just reminded me of it. Craig Smith forecasted Kai Wallen to Nebraska, which is, I think, awesome because he's a weak side defensive end. And, that type of pass rushing ability is going to be extremely important. And so,
And that's probably who it is. Now that I forgot about him, that's probably who the number 4th one is, honestly.
And to be honest with you, I haven't heard of a lot of these guys up until this week, and I love that because that means the staff is doing their homework, and the staff is really trying to evaluate players. And I'm very excited to see how the rest of this class comes together, and I think we might be in for some more news this week. To the fans, don't worry about this class, because they're just trying to piece this one together. 2024 is going to be the first real test, I think, to see what Matt Rule and the staff can do. And I'm honestly very happy with what they've been able to do in the time allotted so far for the 2023 class.
So yeah, to touch on Kai Wallen a little bit, thanks for reminding me about him.
Yeah.
But 6'6", 240. He's out of American River Community College. I think he's the 3rd best edge rusher according to, this is via 24/7's JUCO rankings, but he's the number 38 JUCO prospect, the number 4 edge, and he does have a pretty solid offer list. So I mean, that's sometimes you can't always look at the ratings, but so these are some schools that have been interested: Indiana, Kansas, Oregon State, Arizona State, Houston, Louisville, San Diego State, Utah, Washington State. So I mean, he's got Big Ten offers, ACC, Pac-12. Big 12. So you've got almost basically every Power 5 conference has offered this kid except, somebody from the SEC. So I feel like that's going to be a solid addition. And, he's a big, tall guy, and that's what you're going to need in this defense, kind of those edge guys, those 3-4, because with the 3-3-5, I mean, there's going to be edge players, but they're sometimes going to have to play kind of with their hand in the ground too. And I think having a big guy on the edge who can set the edge, be long out there, it definitely helps. I know in the 3-4 system, they really like to have those bigger 6'4", 6'5", 6'6" defensive linemen. And, I love those guys too, can get their hands up, bat down passes. So, this would be a nice pickup. And I know, JUCO, I like to see Nebraska going through the JUCO ranks too. I mean, that's been something that, the program, has done in the past. It hasn't, it's kind of gone away from it a little bit the past few years. And I think it's good to see it pick up, especially, because they need immediate talent. So it wouldn't surprise me to see, some offensive linemen added from there. But yeah, Wallen was probably the 4th guy. But I do think with Ben Scott, I do feel like Nebraska's got a good shot with him. He was kind of a surprise visitor, but 2-year starter at Arizona State. I believe he can play center. So that would be a nice. believe he started at multiple positions, which I always like. And he, like I said, he's got the ties to Nebraska. I think his mom's from Columbus. His dad, wrestled for the Huskers. So I feel like he's a name to watch. I know everybody's wants a Johnny Cornelius, but I think Nebraska has a shot, but that is going to be a longer, drawn out process. He's, taking visits to Oregon and some stuff like that. So we'll see if Nebraska can beat out those other schools for him.
Cornelius is a classic case of a small school or a smaller school kid kind of getting recognized. And then as soon as one team recognizes him, then a bunch of other programs say, hey, why don't we check him out as well? So I think I would love Cornelius. I think he's going to be tough, to commit, and good for him because he's getting a lot of well-deserved attention.
I mean, he might be the most sought after, because the thing about it is every single team in college football in the FBS needs offensive line help, except maybe like Georgia and Michigan. So to be honest, out of all the guys in there, he might be the most sought after player in the transfer portal right now.
Cornelius, Johnny, if you see this, I'm begging you to come to Nebraska because we probably need offensive line help more than anybody else in the country. Any offensive
and they got the beef jerky NIL thing, so I mean, it's an
if
easy
it
sell.
means we land Cornelius, I'll be buying $70 as a beef jerky. But no, any lineman, and I'll just be frank about this, any lineman, so that I don't have to watch what I watched last season on the line, would be welcome. I don't want to see last season on the line again. I don't care who we land, if he can block soundly, if he can get out of his stance on the snap, then come to Nebraska, please, because we need help. Help wanted.
Yeah, I help. Well, yeah, there is a big help wanted sign. But yeah, I mean, the thing about Scott, he started 28 games, and he actually does have a relationship with Dominic and Donovan Raiola. So it dates back to him being a high school player in Hawaii. So I feel like they've got a good shot there, and that would give him, one solid starter. It's going to be interesting to see all the different moves that they make, in the transfer portal. Some other visitors kind of coming up, and it's going to be another huge weekend of visitors this week. I think they've already got double-digit guys planned for next week. So I mean, it's going to be fast and furious before signing day, which is less than 10 days away now. It's coming up
Trying to
quick.
think, the 21st.
I think so. Yeah, that sounds
So,
about right. So
and I'll be interested to see. And I know we touched on this a
it
little
might
bit.
even be it might be sooner than that even.
You think? I'm looking at my calendar right here. Hold on. It's Wednesday the 21st through the 23rd, I believe.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense then.
But
Yep.
no, I'll be interested to see what the recruiting for Donovan Raiola is like. And again, if he can bring guys that he wants into the program for the transfer portal, for example, I'll be interested to see what he does. I know we touched on this on Friday, but it's just a really intriguing move for Matt Rule to bring him back, and I'm wondering what that means for the recruiting trail. Because I heard a rumor that he didn't really get to choose any of his guys from the portal last year. He didn't really get much say in the portal, and so I'm wondering if an offensive line-minded coach will be able to mesh with him a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, he had to have done. I mean, I know they interviewed him and Rule and Satterfield interviewed Raiola. Look, he's a passionate guy. There's no question that he got the offensive line room working harder, I guess, than they did under the previous, coaching staff. And he does connect well with kids. He played in the NFL. He's he coached in the NFL with the Bears. Kind of got his introduction into coaching that way. And I feel like that Matt Rule has to see something that he can develop. And look, half the battle is getting recruits in there. So if he can get some recruits in there and actually have some better players, then he could have some more success. We'll see. I know that is kind of the one hire that everybody really doesn't like right now, but we'll just have to see how it pans out. I don't think there wasn't like a natural fit in the Matt Rule coaching tree, for that position. So I think that kind of goes into it a little bit too.
One of my followers said that on Friday that maybe Raiola was the cause of the puking at practice, because in my experience working on a football team, the big fellas, they always threw up for any sort of conditioning drill because they either ate too much McDonald's over the summer or they just couldn't do cardio. Now, granted, I can't do cardio either, and I eat a lot of McDonald's, but you always knew who the linemen were because they just couldn't do conditioning. And so I'm wondering, from the lack of conditioning that was clearly evident in the previous staff, and if Raiola wanted to push his line, if, that was part of the puke gate, and also just another sign that the staff was not on the same page.
Yeah, there's the whole recruiting operation, and Matt Rule just seems much more organized, and he has an idea, he has a plan, and he's just I believe Nebraska really got one of the best coaching hires during this cycle, and I believe he's a huge upgrade, huge upgrade over.
He seems
over the
excited to
staff.
do it too. I love it.
Yeah,
I love how excited he gets.
So I feel good about where things at, and you talk about a grinder, a guy that really wants to, he's proven that so far. I mean, he's putting his nose to the grindstone, this entire staff, and, whatever is going to happen that's going to, cause them to lose, it's not going to be because they weren't working hard enough. You're not going to hear about Matt Rule, missing the coaching meeting in Dublin, Ireland because he's too drunk. I mean, you're not going to hear about Matt Rule missing meetings with 5-star quarterbacks because he had too many martinis or whatever, margaritas, which was Scott Frost. I mean, it's just the way Scott Frost operated this position was an insult to Nebraska football. It really was. It was disgraceful. And, I hope that he really feels bad about it because he should. He disgraced this program. And, I love him as a player, but he's the worst coach Nebraska's ever had, and he just did not irreparable damage, but he did a
A
hell of a
lot of
lot of
damage.
damage to this program, and it's because he just didn't give a shit. He did not give a shit. And, for somebody from Nebraska, it's frankly inexcusable. And I know Trev said that he, put his heart and soul into it and whatever, but he didn't. He didn't, and it was obvious from day one.
I mean, Trev, like, what is Trev gonna say? Like,
Well, right, yeah,
you sucked, Scott. Like, you
yeah, I
obviously
know.
didn't care. Like,
That's my point. I mean, he just was giving it
yeah,
lip service,
yeah.
but we all know it wasn't true. He
I don't
probably,
envy.
yeah,
I don't envy. I don't envy Trev's job the past couple of months. He's had to clean up the mess with football team. Who knows with the basketball team? I gotta say they are fun to watch, and they don't look like they're sleeping. So, they are exciting for games. Saturday they should have won. They got absolutely hosed. Terrible performance. I can give the Big Ten referees the prescription for my glasses if they want them, because I can see pretty well, and these officials obviously cannot see well, and it was just
yeah,
awful.
it
And PBA
was.
was electric. I was
It,
watching on TV, and the
yeah,
place was bouncing. Love it.
it was, and I think that's where we gotta get it back to being that way every game. And this Purdue team might be ranked number 1 today, and Nebraska should have won the game. I mean, the ball was loose, and Nebraska had 2 guys going towards the basket. It would have probably been a layup to get the lead. I mean, there could have been a great defensive play or something by Purdue, but Nebraska was probably going to have like a layup drill to take the lead against Purdue, and so it's really frustrating they called that. He was trying to anticipate Nebraska calling a foul instead of actually waiting to see if there was a foul. And it's frustrating because they've played outside of the Indiana game. They've played some really good basketball, and even I thought they had some good moments against Indiana too.
They went
Considering
on
that,
some runs, yeah.
yes, considering that Greasel wasn't out there. I mean, that would have been a lot different game, as we saw Saturday. I mean, Nebraska would have lost by, even though he didn't score a bunch of points, Nebraska would have lost by 10 if Sam Greasel wasn't out there.
Does Greasel have only this year of eligibility, or does he have one more?
I think he just has this year. I'm not
That's a bummer,
100% certain, but
because I love to watch him play. He was diving all over the floor for loose balls. He didn't score a ton on Saturday, but he made plays on the defensive end. He made plays for his teammates, and you can tell he loves to put on the Nebraska uniform and play basketball. And I really wish we had another year with him for sure.
But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, he was diving on the floor, and the way he runs the offense is just so much smoother. Bandamel can do it, but it doesn't. He's better off guard, and so this Nebraska team. That's their best lineup with Sam and Derek Walker in the lineup. And I do agree with Matt Painter said this team's going to win some games and not just at Pinnacle Bank Arena. And I know he was talking about the Big Ten, and hopefully that's true. It's just the schedule is going to be really tough. They've got Kansas State on Saturday, and that's a winnable game. It's in Kansas City. I think it's so. I want to say it's a neutral court game, but at any rate,
I think so.
Nebraska fans travel pretty well to the state of Kansas, so I mean, I'm not too worried about it either way. But that would be a big matchup, another Power 5 opponent. And like I said, to me, I just have this goal of Nebraska trying to have a 500 season. I think that would be a huge step forward. But with what I've seen so far, I think that Fred is putting himself in a position to stay, for next season.
1 year ago, yesterday, meaning Sunday, December 11th, Nebraska lost to 18th ranked Auburn 99-68. And I remember watching the game, and it wasn't even that score is generous, because it should have been 98 or 99-32. That's what it felt like. This past Saturday, they came within 4 points of beating Purdue?
3 points. Yeah, they had a
3-pointer
to tie in overtime.
Yes. That was a hell of a shot by Kesey. That
was a hell of a
three-pointer
shot.
in his face. Sure, he can miss a couple easy ones, and it can be frustrating, but when he's on fire. So anyway, my point with that score comparison was that I feel like this program is finally starting to show some progress. They're finally, starting to show energy defensively. I noticed they went with the double team switch again, which I think has honestly worked out pretty well. And, Purdue's a really good team. Their big man, Edey, was a lot of fun to watch, a little bit of a throwback in an era of three-point shooters, but he was a lot of fun to watch. And Nebraska and Derek Walker and Greasel, they went toe to toe with him. Even if they got blocked, they weren't afraid to go to the basket and try to make things work. They didn't try to stray away from what they do best. So, this team, who knows how many games this team will win, but they play hard and they're a lot of fun to watch. And that's not something that can be said that could have been said, even 2 years ago.
Yeah, you're definitely, I think you're starting to see the program trend in the right direction. It's going to be, so here's the thing is that Derek Walker is a senior and Grease is a senior and Vandemel's a senior. So, those guys all leave. I mean, that is going to make it tough for the future, but if you can kind of establish, some winning culture and, keep adding talented players, you can build on that. But, I feel like that they finally have found like the right type of formula, and Fred understands what it takes to win in the Big Ten. And they have a Big Ten looking basketball team. They can play defense really well, and the shooting is off and on. They haven't shot well the past two games. CJ Wilcher, I don't think even made a three on Saturday.
He's
But
been struggling, unfortunately. But
yeah, but I think they have a formula to win Big Ten basketball games. We'll see how many they can get.
this is the first year where I can really confidently say that this team doesn't look like just a bunch of like mismatched players jumbled together, like you would buy at a grocery store, just a bunch of groceries in the cart. I can
Yeah.
actually see a vision with where this team wants to go. And I think, I've always said his name a ton of times on this, program here. Adam Howard, a very defensive minded coach. I think he's really turned things around for Nebraska in that area. And so, I really feel confident, like, as long as Nebraska sticks to this type of team, and I know it's hard because kids leave and transfer and whatever, I see this as a workable type of strategy. And, I see this being sustainable provided they just recruit the right athletes. Again, easier said than done, but it's nice to see a potential formula just starting to click because I think, honestly, Fred has spent the majority of his time at Nebraska just trying to put rosters together and seeing what works. And obviously, the results haven't been there. So I can't imagine how frustrating this must be for him because he's had so many different rosters during his tenure here. Good to see one kind of stick and make things exciting at least.
Yeah, get yeah, I mean Pinnacle Bank Arena, the vault. It was actually, that reminded me of the early, the Nebrasketball days with Tim Miles when they were beating Wisconsin and getting to the NCAA tournament. So, it felt like that. It's a bummer that it fell short, but I'll make this prediction. I'll say this: more than one ranked team is going to come into Pinnacle Bank Arena and lose. I guarantee. I'm pretty confident in that prediction that Nebraska is going to beat multiple ranked teams in the vault this year. That's going to be a tough place to play. And I don't know if they're going to get 500 or get to a postseason berth or anything, but I think they're going to make some progress. And I think Fred Hoiberg is going to, be back next season. Those are my early predictions on the rest of the season.
You have some wild predictions, and I agree with this one. I gotta say, I agree with this one. I think this team can play the role of spoiler, and I could see this team going to the NIT, but it all depends on the schedule. Like we alluded to last week, and like you said last week, this schedule is not easy. It's not friendly. So, I mean, they're just fun to watch. They really are, and I'm excited to see what they can do down the road.
Yeah, it's going to be at least a season worth watching. And the women's basketball team notched another win so they're going to be maybe in the top 25 this week. They've won 2 in a row, so they've kind of been on a roll a little bit. So keep an eye on those guys. And yeah, so I mean, as we wrap it up here, we'll be coming back with another episode most likely on Wednesday, unless something major happens before then. We have to put up some breaking news, but I don't necessarily see that. But there should be, some more recruiting fireworks, and you never know with the transfer portal, man. There could be, somebody we don't even know about. There could be some commitments this week, but definitely keep an eye on Jalen Lloyd on Saturday. And it feels like, there's some other verbal pledges coming out here. So Nebraska's building up some momentum, and the recruiting here for 2023 and beyond. So any final thoughts here, Danny?
I just want a Casey Thompson decision. I want to make a video on that soon with either yes or no so that we can just kind of figure out, what is this quarterback room going to look like. So hopefully that's soon. I wouldn't be mad either way. And But, I think a decision needs to be made soon. Granted, it's easy for me to say, but I'm just worried about not how long this is taking, but the people we're missing out on because it's kind of taking a little bit longer.
Yeah, and I hopefully he's. I hope that means he's coming back. I do think that would be a good thing. But if he is going to move on, hopefully he'll give the program the courtesy of enough time to make some decisions there that they need to make. So there maybe him and Rule need to kind of have another conversation and say, hey, this is what's best for you, what's best for the program. But hopefully, I really hope that decision comes down this week, like you said, so we can get some clarity there. And if it does come down this week, make sure you're checking out the Husker Big Red YouTube channel because we'll have all the breakdowns of it. We're going to be following all these recruiting news and notes, coaching staff, basketball. So, make sure that you like our videos, get into the comment section. Let's get a little debate going, and make sure that you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our content, throughout this off season and throughout the Matt Rule era. So, with that in mind, as always, folks, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.